Welcome to WKIM. We keep it moving with Marcia Jews. We have two full interviews tonight, and I'm so excited. Our first guest is Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, president of UMBC, the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. And at 8 o'clock, our next guest will be Diane Bell McCoy, the president of Associated Black Charities. So we hope you stay with us. So let me introduce you to this phenomenal man who has this incredible bio, but we're going to read it. Freeman Hrabowski has served as president of UMBC since 1992. His research and publications focus on science and math education, with special emphasis on minority participation and performance. He chaired the National Academy's committee that produced the 2011 report, Expanding Underrepresented Minority Participation, America's Science and Technology Talent at the Crossroads. He was named 2012 by President Obama to chair the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for African Americans. At age 12, Freeman Hrabowski marched with Martin Luther King. Now he's president of the University of Maryland, where he works to create an environment that helps underrepresented students, specifically African American, Latino, and low income learners, helps them to get degrees in math and science. He shares the four pillars of UMBC's approach. In 2008, he was named one of the America's Best Leaders by U.S. News and World Report, which ranked UMBC the nation's #1 up-and-coming university for 6 years. For the past 5 years, from 2015 to 19, U.S. News ranked UMBC in the top 10 on a list of the nation's most innovative national universities. For the past 10 years, U.S. News also consistently ranked UMBC among the nation's leading institutions for best undergraduate teaching. Time Magazine named him one of America's 10 best college presidents in 2009 and one of the 100 most influential people in the world in 2012. 2011, he received both the TAACREF Theodore M. Hesburgh Award for Leadership Excellence and the Carnegie Corporation of New York's Academic Leadership Award, recognized by many as the nation's highest awards among higher education leaders. Also, in 2011, he was named one of 7 top American leaders by the Washington Post and the Harvard Kennedy School Center for Public Leadership. In 2012, he received the Heinz Award for his contributions to improving the human condition and was among the inaugural inductees into the U.S. News and World Report STEM Solutions Leadership Hall of Fame. More recently, he received the American Council on Education's Lifetime Achievement Award in 2018 and named a recipient of University of California, Berkeley's Clark Kerr Award. He serves as a consultant to the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health, the National Academies, and universities and school systems nationally. He also serves on the boards of the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, France Merrick Foundation, Marguerite Casey Foundation, T. Rowe Price Group, the Urban Institute, McCormick and Company, and the Baltimore Equitable Society. He served previously on the boards of Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching and the Maryland Humanities Council, member and chair. And he has a list of other honors, including election to the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the American Philosophical Society, receiving the prestigious McGraw Prize in Education, the U.S. Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering, mentoring, the Columbia University's Teachers College Medal for Distinguished Service, the GE African American Forum Icon Lifetime Achievement Award, the American Educational Research Association's Distinguished Public Service, and the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, AAAS. William D. Casey Award, being named a Fellow of the AAAS, Black Engineer of the Year, BEA, by the BEA STEM Global Competitiveness Conference, Educator of the Year by the World Affairs Council, for Washington, D.C., Marylander of the Year by the editors of the Baltimore Sun, and being listed among Fast Company magazine's first Fast 50 champions of innovation in business and technology, and receiving the Technology Council of Maryland's Lifetime Achievement Award. He also holds honorary degrees from more than 40 institutions, including Harvard, Princeton, Duke, University of Michigan, University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Johns Hopkins University, Georgetown University, Haverford College, and Harvard Mudd College. With philanthropist Robert Meyerhoff, he co-founded the Meyerhoff Scholars Program in 1988. The program is open to all high achieving students committed to pursuing advanced degrees and research careers in science and engineering, and advancing underrepresented minorities in these fields. The program is recognized as a national model, and based on program outcomes, Dr. Hrabowski has authored numerous articles and co-authored 2 books, Beating the Odds and Overcoming the Odds, Oxford University Press, and focusing on parenting and high achieving African American males and females in science. His 2015 book is Holding Fast to Dreams, Empowering Youth from the Civil Rights Crusade to STEM Achievement by Beacon Press. Describes the events and experiences that played a central role in his development as an educator and leader. The Empowered University shared leadership, cultural change, and academic success at Johns Hopkins University Press, which he completed in 2019, and 2 colleagues examines how university communities support academic success by cultivating an empowering institutional culture. A child leader in the civil rights movement, Hrabowski was prominently featured in Spike Lee's 1997 documentary, 4 Little Girls, on the racially motivated bombing in 1963 of Birmingham's 16th Street Baptist Church. Born in 1950 in Birmingham, Alabama, Hrabowski graduated from Hampton Institute, highest honors in mathematics. He received his MA in mathematics and PhD in higher ed and administration statistics from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And I am honored to introduce my friend, Dr. Freeman Hrabowski. Hey, Freeman.
That's you.
Are you awake?
You read the whole thing.
I read it. I read it. I wanted it to be preserved, and I have now forever in the annals of our reports.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I really do.
Well, you know what? We appreciate you. And I remember when you got to UMBC after leaving Coppin.
That's right. That was in 1987.
And that was a huge journey for you, because you were there 5 minutes before you had Meyerhoff working.
But I first give credit to Coppin. I spent 10 years at Coppin, and I'm still in contact with many of my students and their children, in fact. So kudos for what Coppin does to help Baltimore, and for helping prepare me for UMBC.
Mm-hmm. They
Very
did.
much so. And I'm sorry I'm having these technical problems with the visual, but at least you can hear me, I hope.
Well, we can hear you, but I also see your picture.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
So, and
good.
that's fine. Yeah, she was able to make that happen,
Thank you.
right?
Thank you very much. Thank
Well,
you.
I think it's really interesting because I wanted to read all of your bio. And it was important because I know that pretty soon you're going to be retiring,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And I think it's important for people to really have an understanding of the commitment that you've had to young people and learning. And that's been your priority. And people that I've met that have attended UMBC with you at the helm speak so highly of you and how you just know everybody on the campus. You know their names, what they're measuring. I mean, what you talked about the last time.
No, I enjoy my students so much. They are very, very special. And of all the things that I will always think about when I think about UMBC, it will be the amazing students and the alumni, along with the faculty and staff. Just a good group of people, great community. We like saying UMBC is the house that love built.
Mm, I like that.
Yep.
So is
Yep.
that like a t-shirt slogan?
It's that and more. It really is. We talk about the house that love built. We talk about the house of grit. And most important, we talk about being your best self,
Mm.
being your best self. That's what we want each person to work to do. Very important.
But how do you do that? How do you do that in an environment where you don't always, because you get students from across the board.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. We've got students from 100 countries. More than half have at least one parent from another country. We have 20% Black, probably 26, 27% Asian, 5 or 6% Hispanic. So we got people from everywhere, but we have the tough conversations, Marsha. We
Mhm.
talk about the issues of the day and what's happening in society and how do we understand what we have in common and what we can appreciate about our differences. Both are important.
Have you found that the students were readily available to have these conversations? Because those are some deep conversations for adults.
Oh yeah, and the challenge is that most people in our country have not had those tough conversations, and so it does take time. And the number one word is trust. Have to figure out how to build trust in a way that people know we may disagree, but we've got the right values, and we want to make it better for everybody. Very important.
You don't have to agree, but you don't have to be disagreeable.
And you said that well. You know, we say we want to learn how to agree to disagree agreeably,
Hmm.
or to
Hmm.
agree to disagree with civility. We can disagree, but we don't have to fight.
I think that's really interesting because UMBC has created a whole different kind of culture. What did you use? I mean, I remember Michael, whatever his last name was, so I don't
Michael
remember.
Hooker. Yeah, Michael
Michael
Hooker.
Hooker.
Yep,
Okay. He was there at the time when you first went there,
yep,
right?
yep, yep.
But you saw something different for you to go from A to Z in
Right,
a very short period of time, if I
right.
recall.
Yeah. Well, let me just say that there's so many people who have been giving their lives and careers to UMBC, and students who had graduated. We've got a second generation group that always wanted the university to be better because we can always be better if
Mhm.
we accept that. The newest book we wrote on the Empowered University that came out a couple of years ago really is on the fact that it should be shared leadership, culture change, and academic success. And the
Mm.
idea was, how do we help more students to do well? How do we teach students to have a sense of self, to believe in themselves, to be inspired by what they might be able to accomplish? So I like saying UMBC is magical. I mean, when you come on that campus, you feel it. You feel that ideas are flourishing. You see people of all backgrounds interacting with people of all backgrounds, but you see people who are proud of their own culture, whether it is Caribbean or from India or African Americans from the Baltimore area or Latinos from the DC area or New York, but you feel the combination of people having a sense of self and being about something. And it's something, you feel the magic when you walk on that campus.
You can. And I think that you've instilled freedom there,
I appreciate
right?
it. I
Because
appreciate
you're so easily accessible.
I try. I try hard. I really do. You know, and I think there's something to be said about humility. I'll give you a statement, a story from my grandmother who had a sixth grade education and yet was one of the wisest people I ever met. She said, Freeman, as you get older, you need to stay on your knees. And I said, well, Grandma, yeah, I'll pray. She said, I want you to do it for that reason, but by the grace of God. But she said, also, as you go up the ladder and work hard, you're going to get knocked down because any leader gets knocked down. But if you stay on your knees, you won't fall too far.
You stay on
Your
your
knees,
knees.
you won't fall too far. That's exactly right.
Mhm.
It's only when we get high and mighty that the fall is so
Mm,
hard, you see.
mm.
And we all make mistakes. Every leader makes mistakes. But my point is always help me. If I'm making a mistake, give me some advice. I'm doing the best I can. Nobody makes it by themselves. Very
Mhm.
important.
You know, Sandy, my daughter talks about folks sitting high and looking low.
Yeah.
She said, right?
That's powerful.
That's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have removed yourself from that conversation because you walk around the campus and stop and have conversations with
Yep.
your staff and
Yep. With everybody. With everybody.
Mhm,
I want to always do
mhm,
that. I really do.
mhm.
And to the day I leave that, I'll be leaving UMBC on July 31st. And I'm so excited about the new president, who is a brilliant African American woman who's a polymer chemist.
Mm.
Her mom was an English teacher. Her dad was a science teacher and a minister. And she can quote Shakespeare. And she says her dad taught her two lessons. One, how to tell a story. And number two, how to take up the offering, and made her ready to be president.
I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. So she's got that same Southern way that I have, and she's even smarter. So I'm really proud and happy for you.
But she has to really jump for that bar
Oh,
because
she
we
is.
know.
Oh, but she's been doing it all her life. She was the
Mhm,
chair of chemistry at Chapel Hill, if you
mm,
can imagine. Full
That's
professor and chair
huge.
of chemistry at Chapel Hill, and then moved from Chapel Hill to become the dean of the Trinity College of Arts and Sciences at Duke. She could have been going on to the Ivies. She chose UMBC as my colleagues chose her. It's a marriage made in heaven.
Mm, I can't wait.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's a legacy though. You know, I have all these little planned questions I was supposed to have. You
Right.
know,
Right.
Miss Walter does so well in keeping me on point because you know
Right.
I'll be veering off somewhere. But what are four things
Yeah.
that in your life that you feel are the most important?
Huh. I start with my God. All of my life, I've been taught. My wife and I, Jackie, and I talk about that idea. Put God first, and all other things come after that. So my faith and God first. My family, my wife, my wonderful rock of my life, Jackie, for 50 years, my best friend.
Mm,
My son and his wife and my grandson are right there as a part of family. And then I would say my students, and that means the alumni and mentees, all of them, and then wonderful friends. It's all about people and relationships.
mhm,
All about people and
mhm,
relationships. Who are we if we're not connected to
mm.
other people?
But
Very,
what does connection mean? You
yes.
know, too often people aren't raised in an environment where they even have the skills to understand, to develop those relationships.
Yes, yes. I think we learn to do things by doing them. I love math because I've done it all my life. I love to read because I've done it all my life. But my folks were teaching me all my life how to connect with trust to other people, how to support friends and other people, how to be respectful of older people, but also how to give unconditional love. It's hard
Mhm.
to give unconditional love if you've not felt it or experienced it yourself. Very important. Very important.
And you're absolutely right, because where do you go to get that?
Yep. Yep.
Where
And
do you go to learn that if it's not given to you?
yeah. And it usually it's a combination of family or somebody close to the family who helps, or a teacher, or a teacher. I've known my mother gave love to some children who were not getting it. And she loved them, I think, sometimes more than she loved me. And I felt it. I felt it. And I would say sometimes, you like them more than you like me, Mom. She said, well, you don't need as much.
So she had already put it in the pit of your belly.
Yeah, oh, yeah. You give that love when it's needed more. She said, no, you blessed. She said, they need me more than you need me. It was deep.
Right.
It was deep. It really
But
was.
that's real.
Yeah.
And, I think that's like a aha.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you don't expect that.
No.
But that's really what it is. And you go out into the world.
Yes.
And if you're prepared with that love that's ingrained into your bloodstream,
Yep.
versus this detachment impacts how you function everywhere else.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right. That's exactly right. We need to be teaching children. And that's why I'm proud that UMBC works with hundreds and hundreds of children from the city in our choice program and others, designed to help them support their families in getting that sense of self. If a child can get that sense of self and learn to read and think well, all things are possible. Very important. Very, very important.
And it sort of, what is it? Removes the sense of fear.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that we really think about where that fear comes from.
Yeah. It depends on how much of that love the child has gotten to know you can try things, and I'm here. If you fall, I'm here for you. You see, very important. And that's something we really work to support our students with, to let them know things may not go well, but we're here and we can work it out. It's important that you keep telling students that. Very, very important.
And, too often there are a lot of the administrative leadership of institutions don't always do what you do. Because you just roll around like you might as well have some jeans on and a backpack because you're moving around. And I've seen you walk around that campus.
I try.
Yes.
I really try. And, but students love that. They love it when you can connect, when you're not so high and mighty, when you can talk with them about life, But let me tell you, I love talking to the physical plant people, a lot of the guys, and they will say, Doc, I like this campus because people respect my experience. And I've had physical plant people say, Doc, I may not have a college degree, but I got a PhD in life.
Yes.
And I can talk to these students about life when I see them being discouraged. So we tell our physical plant people are educators also. They can help us. Everybody on that campus can help us to help direct and be that village for every student. Very important. Very important.
Who or were or are your role models?
People, first of all, some of my students, believe it or not, I've got students over the years who've had the hardest circumstances. I've had students that had cancer all 4 or 5 years at UMBC, and to keep going and to keep moving. And I've gone through it with them. For example, I've had students who have died who still inspire me because they lived life to the fullest, even though they died at 21 and they left messages and legacies. I still get inspired by them. But then people who have gone on, Dr. Richard McKinney is an example, who worked both at Morgan and Coppin, was a real mentor to me and a fellow church member and in organizations together. But Bob Meyerhoff, who has given us so much to help young Black males and others. Walter Sondheim. But I have on my wall, a picture of Mary McLeod Bethune. She and Booker Washington, both. I got a picture of the two of them because Booker Washington was a mentor to Mary McLeod Bethune. And I've got this picture looking over me all the time. They are my education heroes.
Wow.
Very much so. Very much so. Yep.
That's powerful.
Yep.
And you have them hanging?
Yep. I've got them on a lovely, lovely photo of them on the campus with the trees probably from about 1900. I'll send you a copy of it. It's a
Oh, I'd love that.
I will send you a copy of it. It really is.
I would love that.
Yeah, it's so powerful. It really is. Yes.
Yeah.
Heroes. Yep. Yep. And
You've
on the other
mentioned
side, let
Walter.
me just say, on
No,
the
go
other side,
ahead.
John Hope Franklin.
Yes,
Yeah,
Bethel.
and he was a mentor and was so kind to me over the years. And then in other parts here in my office, I've got Frederick Douglass and I've got Martin King. They were all. And in another place, I got my pastor from childhood. All heroes of mine. Oh yeah. Yep.
And so when you say they're heroes, give me a couple of examples of what hero means to
Sure.
you.
Hero or shero, whether it's Mary McLeod Bethune or it's Frederick Douglass, people who gave their lives in the service of others,
Hmm.
who gave their lives. So from whether we're talking about Booker Washington or Du Bois, are we talking about Frederick Douglass or John Franklin? Are we talking about Richard McKinney or Walter Sondheim or Bob Myhoff? These are all people from different backgrounds
Yes.
who have given their lives in service of others. That to me, that's what I'm talking about when I see a hero. And Mary McLeod Bethune she was the advisor to Eleanor Roosevelt. She was a part of that Negro cabinet in Washington. She helped during all those really strong periods of poverty to help elevate people. She started that school for girls that's now Bethune-Cookman. Heroes, very much so.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they need to be elevated all the time.
Documented, and people know
Yes.
people were fighting this fight well before we got on the scene. Yes.
And had to go through a whole bunch.
Yep. Yep.
Like what we're doing ain't nothing. For real. So has your initial vision for your future changed? How has it changed, if so?
Yeah, great question. No, I'm looking forward to working with presidents and provosts around the country. I teach in the Harvard program now. I have for years, and then I mentor presidents and provosts and work with boards from public and private institutions to HBCUs. I had a delightful time recently down with the Atlanta institutions. I'm one of the few men who can consider himself an honorary Spelmanite. I have an honorary Spelman, yeah. And former presidents of Spelman have been friends and in a couple of cases mentees. I mean, wonderful, wonderful. All the way up to Wellesley, where Paula Johnson, an African-American woman, is president, and we work together regularly. But a number of universities of all races, working with presidents and, again, with boards, in giving them support because the job is very hard. It's very, very hard. It really is. And then being very proud of colleagues here in Maryland who are doing a great job in a variety of institutions, just being supportive of people.
So what led you on the path of being a president of a university?
You know, you and I probably have something in common. We have always spoken our mind. You know that. You know
Yes.
why we have been so close. And I would always tell people what I didn't like about what was going on, even at the University of Illinois. And the first response from people would be, okay, if you don't like it, then you do it. Then you do it. And it's always been that way, that I was always suggesting things and they would say, okay, if you want to change it, you do it. And so I've just moved along just that way. It's all been about the work. And for me, it was always about what can we do to help more students succeed? That's always been the question. Yes.
So, but when you say that, what can we do to help students succeed? And this is this big idea.
Yeah.
Right? It's a big idea.
Yeah.
How do you initialize an idea that's as big as you did with the Meyerhoff program? That's a huge program.
Yes, yes. But let me say this. Here's the key. It's not, as I've said many times, not about me. It's about all of us. Meaning, it wasn't just me doing it. It was you brainstorm with people. You look at a problem and say, this is not right, or we got this issue, or students of color are not doing well in science. And the big question becomes, what can you do to make it better? And what's really nice about that is that people work together to brainstorm and feed off of each other, and we come up with ideas. And that's exactly what happened in development of the Mile program. Bob Myhoff he really wanted to help with issues involving Black males because he said everything on TV if it wasn't sports, was negative about Black males.
Yes.
We wanted to help more Black students in general succeed in science. We married those two ideas, and a lot of people helped in pulling it together. Very much so.
But when you pull an idea together, because that was really out of the box, right? That
Yep.
was
Yep.
out of the box.
Yeah.
It just appeared in your brain for real.
But I'd been seeing for so long um, students not do well in science in so many places. So it was a passion of trying to figure out what can we do, what can we really do to increase the number of students of color, particularly Blacks,
Right.
who not only make it in science, but who excel, who really want, quite frankly, to make a difference. And it worked. It worked. It took a lot, but a lot of people had to be involved, a lot of faculty and staff and other students, but we made it work. And we now lead the country in producing Blacks who are going to get PhDs in natural sciences and engineering and MD PhDs.
So that's like this little bitty drop that dropped in your spirit.
Uh-huh.
and then it took over the university and the community, right?
Yeah.
How do you take that seed? What's the ingredient? What are you putting on that for it to flourish to that magnitude that it's an internationally acknowledged and celebrated program?
Right. There's several things I would say. Number one, you document what works and what doesn't work. That's number one. You document what works and what doesn't work. Number two, you really work to help students succeed when they're not succeeding. But when they do, you sing the praises. You know this. Good news, you have to work at getting it out there. If it's bad news, everybody knows.
Oh yeah, and the mama.
Oh yeah. But if it's good news, you got to work at it. So we really worked at getting that message out that students were doing well. We really did. And it made a difference. It really did. We're very blessed. Very, very blessed.
So what does leadership mean to you? And can anybody become a leader? What do they need to be a leader?
To me, being a leader means, first of all, being able to be a good follower. And first, you know how to listen and learn from other people. You have the humility to know you don't know everything. The first book in the first line of my newest book, The Empower University, says it's not about me, it's about us. You start there. And then the second point I would make is good leaders ask good questions. You know, I always quote the Nobel laureate, Hrabowski, who said when he was growing up in New York, all of his friends' mothers would ask them every day at the end of the school day, what'd you learn in school? He said, not my mother. My mother would say, Izzy, did you ask a good question today? Well, good leaders know how to ask good questions to get to the bottom of what is the deal? Where are we now? Where do we need to go? So you're not like coming out of your own head. You're learning from other people what needs to be done in thinking about the gap between where you are and where you want to go, because that's the whole point of leadership, to move people from one place to where people think they need to go. It's shaping that path, you know. And so to do that, you got to be able to ask good questions. You got to be able to empower people to take ownership of the questions and the approaches. And most important, good leaders know how to inspire people. And you inspire people with trust and authenticity. You know, if people can see that you mean what you're saying, that you believe it. I mean, for me, I believe that education transforms lives. I believe that in my bones, in my blood, in my DNA. And that's what we do at UMBC. We believe that what we are doing will shape and help the future of every student on that campus. Very important.
And you know, I think some of the things that I get that disturb me is that too often we have young people who demonstrate leadership in small little subsets of life.
Right.
But there's no real way for them to tap in and learn how to build it and allow it to explode, to grow, to be nurtured like a plant.
Yes, yes. Everybody needs coaches, mentors, champions. Nobody makes it alone. Everyone needs people who can give them support. I don't care who it is. I don't care how talented they are, whether it's a great basketball player, a great speaker, a mathematician, or someone wanting to lead. People need others to give them support. It's just all of us need that at all points of our lives. We all need others who can give us support. Very important.
Okay, so now my next question would be is we all need that, but too many of us don't even know where to go to get them, to see them, to
Right,
be in their presence.
right, right,
There's
right.
something that has to occur
Yeah.
somehow to
Yes.
give them that unction to move in a direction to find them.
So, so for our students, we do a lot of leadership training. And we do that with our kids in programs like the Choice Program and working with the children at Lakeland Elementary and the consortium of schools. We've got the Sherman Scholars are working with them. These are really talented math and science majors who want to work in challenging schools. And we're teaching the students how to support the teachers, but also how to inspire the children to want to lead also. So it's got to be multi-layered, where older children are helping younger children and college students are helping kids pre-K through 12. And we're supporting teachers as they do it. It's got to be a kind of ecosystem, a network. And that's what we do between UMBC and some of the schools over there in the Lakeland community, and with places like Northrop Grumman when engineers come to work on a STEAM center and helping kids to see what they can do. So it's got to be more and more connecting people with resources to people who may not have them. Very important.
And so if we're in schools that are underserved,
Yes, yes.
how do we access that for them to even understand that they need this support?
I will tell you that I love Najib, the principal of that school, and the others. They want help. They appreciate help, and they work with us. And here's the deal that you'll appreciate. It's not just, by the way, I just got into your system. I believe if she looks, I finally see myself.
Oh, good.
My laptop didn't have any power. I don't know if she can put me in so you can at least see me for a minute.
Can I see him for a minute, Katanya? She's gonna try probably.
Yeah, because I'm in. It says let's check
Yay.
it. Yeah.
You ready, Katanya? Can you bring him in?
Because you can bring it in. I'll turn off my phone, but because the laptop was not working. But now, and it says here, enter studio. Let me just see. Oh yeah. Oh.
So we've got.
Can you?
There he is.
Great. I'll turn the other one off.
Okay. Yay! Oh, wait a minute. You disappeared. Where'd you go? Katanya?
Yeah.
There he is.
Okay,
don't touch anything else.
Yeah, take that young picture of me down so they can see the old me.
You don't look much different. I mean, I think we got a little extra.
Yeah.
We know about that. We know about that. I'm just grateful to have it. I'll be here on that. Whatever.
Blessed. We're blessed.
Blessed.
We're blessed.
The Lord has graced us. Okay.
Yeah, but Marsha, I've been working so hard to get this laptop with some power so I could get in and at least see you for a minute face to face.
That's all right. And we're just grateful. We're grateful that you took the time to even make this happen. So please hear me say that. This is so whatever. We're going to keep on talking.
Okay. And just let me say, Marsha, Paul, unfortunately, I've been talking too much, so my voice, I'm sorry it sounds this bad. Normally, I don't sound quite this hoarse, but it's from speaking so much. But I'm glad we're talking now.
You always speak so much. I don't know why today's supposed to be any different. You know what? It ain't like I don't know you because you be talking all the time, brother. I don't know.
You are so bad. You are so bad.
I am telling the truth, though. That's something you and I both have in common.
Yeah. We talk. You're right. You're right.
Everybody about everything.
I love it.
Yes. So we now need to be focused on an environment where we have a pandemic.
Yeah.
And there are so many issues going on
Yeah.
with these kids and internet, and the digital divide still occurs.
Hmm.
What are 5 things that you would say to administrators and government officials and parents about how to get these kids focused? I'm
Okay.
just really concerned. It's over 2 years.
Yeah.
Half these children haven't even been in school.
Right.
What do we
Right.
do about that? What's that stopgap? How do
Sure.
we
Sure. Great
change that?
questions. Great. Let me just start by saying uh, we are blessed to now have been vaccinated, so many of us. And I want people to thank UMBC and my alumna, Dr. Kismikia Corbett, first Black woman to ever create a vaccine. She co-led the team at NIH with Dr. Bonnie Graham. Young woman in her 30s from rural North Carolina, came to UMBC, went and got a PhD, NIH, now at Harvard. But that vaccine we have because of Dr. Corbett. Everybody should look up that name. It should give every human being goosebumps that a young Black woman helped to create the vaccine, Dr. Kismikia
Wow.
Corbett. So we start there with the vaccine, that idea. Now, secondly, I want you to think about the fact that, yes, children did fall behind, and the less privileged they are, the further they fell behind, the farther they fell behind. Because even for middle class parents who were trying to work at home and work with their children while working, it was hard. When my wife was down in South Carolina helping my grandson, 10-year-old grandson, and she was being the general, if she wasn't right there with him while he was on that screen, he was going ahead to do his other thing and having fun. So the idea is that it's important to think about the fact that many children didn't have the privilege of a grandmother or somebody just focusing with them all the time. And all of our children, regardless of whether they had that kind of help, did fall behind. So now it's about catch-up time. So we are working very, very hard, working to support, most importantly, to support teachers as they look at the gap and how we fill that gap. We started doing it this summer over at Lakeland and our Sherman Scholars, and we're still doing it. And we need to do more and more in the evenings, on weekends, in the summer to help catch up over this next several years will be very important. It can't just be business as usual. We've got to give them more support than ever.
So, is there a national program for children to be able, be it in elementary, middle, high, and college,
Uh-huh.
we've got all these issues that
Yeah.
are removing the holistic approach that they're getting in school?
Right, right. Well, the good news is we're back now, and teachers have learned how to use the technology to supplement what happens in person, meaning, as we're doing at UMBC, many faculty may be in person, but they'll also add things using technology to supplement. Well, similarly, we're doing that at schools like Lakeland to be supportive of the teachers there as we work to try to build the skills that they didn't get over the last 2 years. And I know I'm very confident in the CEO of Baltimore City. She is very impressive, Dr. Sanjalis, and she's working on those issues. We like working with the school system, with the teachers. And the key for universities is, as you would imagine, we don't have all the answers. We're there to be supportive. The teachers are the experts. We may know content, teachers know children.
Okay.
We work together in thought partnership arrangements. So we're equals in doing that work. When I go in, and I love going in and sitting with children in third and fourth grade and working on math problems, because they appreciate you, Marshall. They really, when you get ready to leave, they go, please don't go. Oh,
wow.
man, it touches your heart, right?
Mhm.
And there's so many opportunities for adults to help teachers who work so hard to help the children and support their families. We all can get involved and be supportive. Very important. Very important.
So in looking at this is Baltimore, but you also have a broader view,
Yes, I'm looking at, yes.
right?
Yep.
There's the landscape, it's a lot of miles.
Yep.
What would you think, not to disparage anything or anybody or any system or
Right.
institution,
Right.
what have you seen? Because the people that are being groomed and educated in elementary, middle, and high school, you want one day to go to your institution or some
Yeah,
other larger college or institution,
yeah,
for children particularly who look like us.
sure, sure. Mhm.
What do we need to do to create that pipeline and have the community understand that it's not it they have to be involved. Everybody has to
Yeah,
be involved. And maybe it's me.
no, we have to, and we have to give families the support. I like the fact that at Lakeland there is a family center, and parents volunteer to help with that center with after school work. I like the fact that they're working on pre-K, because we have to do things well before kindergarten to help
Yes.
children, because children are behind if they've not been learning their name and letters and those kinds of things compared to other children. I do think the larger systemic issue, though, is education is not one of the issues we hear about in the public domain. And that means what to me? That means that we need to be voting to put in office people who care about our children and the
Mm,
education of all of our children, so that education is a major agenda item. It's very important that we do that, and that we focus on education and speaking the truth and teaching students to think critically and getting it out of the politics and really inspiring children to want to learn. So it's a larger issue in our country right now that is focused on many things. And when I, as an educator, as I'm talking to my students, I'm saying, let's help people vote. And I don't
mm.
want to tell people who to vote for. The question is, do you want people in office, though, who care about the children?
But what does that person look like? What Give us some things. Give me some things that you would items that you would recommend for that person to be able to
And there are
understand and
some.
deploy.
And to be fair, there are people right now. Maryland is very fortunate. Maryland is very fortunate. Elected officials really do care about education. The county executive is our graduate, Johnny O in Baltimore County. The Speaker of the House is our graduate, caring deeply. All right. I give this governor credit also for caring about education. This is one of the few states, and I can say this, where we have some bipartisan support. I mean, for education. All right. Most states are fighting each other so much, they never put the children first. We put the children first in Maryland. We know we've got to do more in all the school districts, right? To get it right. Because in some of our school districts, you've got the best education in the world right
Mhm.
now. We've got to work to do that for all the school systems. And that's all involved in resources and money. And that's why the work involving current commission and the work to support school systems is very important. So when I go around the country, or even when I'm talking with people at Harvard, I'm always saying, look at what we're doing in Maryland. We, like every other state, we can say we are certainly not perfect, but we are working together. Elected officials are working together. Unfortunately, in many places, the only thing you hear about in education in other states will be school boards where people come in to disrupt because
Okay.
of politics. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
We need people like our state who are saying, no, let's put the children first. Let's get away from the political agenda. Let's put the children first, of all children of all backgrounds first, and show our children we believe in them. That's what we've got to be adamant about, that, because if we don't, we suffer later because of it. Very much so.
So when we look at the all of the associations and then the principals and the
Yeah.
superintendents and all of these schools across the country,
Yes.
are they on the same page?
It depends on where you are in the country.
Right.
There are challenges in the country. Politics will get involved. I see us being more on the same page here. We have our challenges, but I really do believe from the people I know that we're talking about people who care about education and about our children. Okay. We have work to do, but I want to say this. One of my mentees is the mayor of Baltimore City. I know he cares. I know he cares. And it's a hard job. It's very
Yeah.
easy for us to sit back and say what's somebody, but no, I know it's a hard, and he's really working on it. Just as county executive, My mentee is the county executive of Howard County. These people care. They really do care. As I was talking about the legislators, it's a big deal, you know, but the Speaker of the House, the President said, these people are working on these issues. So people in Maryland don't realize how fortunate we are to talk about the importance of vaccinating everybody, to talk about the fact that we want to make education better for everyone, right? To know, to call it out, that we want to make every environment safer for everyone. We know we've got issues to deal with. Not trying to sugarcoat it, but I'm saying people really want to make a difference in this state and in this Baltimore area. Very much so.
I'm glad to hear you say that. So, if you had the power to make some changes, what are 5 things you would do to tell parents and why?
Yeah. I love it. You give me that quantity. You just say something, 5 things. You look at you. Number one, reading skills. But even before reading skills, I want you to think about this. It's teaching your children to believe in themselves, teaching them to know they are children of God. They are special. Every child needs to feel that I'm somebody, all right? And that people believe in me and that I am loved unconditionally. Call that whatever you want, but all of that. Then the academic skills, reading. If you give me a child who can read well, I can teach you to do math problems because math is about reading. It's word problems, all right? And then helping children to dream about the possibilities and to think about, what do you want to do besides be a professional football player? If you don't do that, what would you like to do? Because, you know, everybody wants to be an athlete or they want to be a rapper. But beyond those things, what else might you want to do? And then giving them exposure to successful people who look like them, whoever they are, for women, for people of color, for people first generation college. Let them see examples of people, and then just reading together, having time to communicate together, to express the values of learning, of treating people with respect, of believing in oneself, of being fascinated by new ideas, of asking questions. This is what I want every family to do. Very much. My earliest books, Beating the Odds and Overcoming the Odds, focus
Can we still get those books?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oxford Press. Yeah. Hrabowski's books. I've got 4. And the one, Holding Fast to Dreams. Oh, yeah. On growing up in Birmingham as a civil rights child leader. All those books. And then my TED Talk is on success in science. But what I say about science is true for life. Great expectations of ourselves and others, building community among people. It takes a journalist to produce a journalist, or a scientist to produce a scientist, and then being honest about evaluating where we are. That's the TED Talk. Worth looking at, 15 minutes.
It is. And I put it in my newsletter that went out.
Great.
Powerful. I highly recommend it. And you would just be tickled because my grandson is all of that and a couple of dozen boxes of chips. Self-starter, homeschooled, and he loves to read. Freeman, I know we got to go, but I need to share this with you. He's up in his bedroom and he's reading his book, and all of a sudden he started screaming and giggling and whatever. And so I went to the door. He had his door closed. I said, Peyton, what you know? He said, read my book. And he's in there. He's so engrossed.
He's laughing.
He's enjoying.
I love it. We want every child. We want every child to feel the joy of learning. That is absolutely the case.
Yes, it is.
Absolutely the case.
Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, I'm not going to ask you about what's next. I'm going to bring you back to talk about what you're doing.
Yep.
How about that?
And Marcia, let me commend you on being a wonderful voice for the community, being such a leader. You have always been an excellent thinker, and you've always believed in speaking truth to power. You have that level of authenticity. I commend you on that. And I commend you for being so wise as to bring Diane Bell McCoy to your next hour, UMBC alumna from years ago, somebody who is another example of authentic leadership.
Yes.
What Diane says, you can take to the bank.
Unapologetically.
Oh, yeah. I've always believed in her, and I always will.
Yes.
Please let her know I said that, would you?
I will. I met her. She was in my leadership class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I just was sitting there. Every time she opened her mouth, I was like, where did this motherfucker coming from? All this information. Who is this? I
She,
need
like
to
some
know
others,
her.
she and others came when I first, and they said, now, we hear you the real deal. You coming from Coppin. We're going to watch, but if you do the right thing, we will support you. And she supported me from day one, 35 years ago,
Wow.
because she was a graduate of UMBC. And she has been so supportive of my campus and me all those years. Really is.
Well, that's two of you. Those are two peas in the pie because we know that both of y'all are straight up no chaser. Ain't neither one of y'all playing with nobody. Don't bring it. If you're going to bring it, you're going to take it back. Now,
I love it. I'm
right?
so glad we got a chance face to face at the end,
Yes.
You
Thank
are
you for
superb.
making that happen.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Marsha.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Freeman Hrabowski, UMBC president. And we are so glad and looking forward to the next
Yes,
stage.
it'll be great. Looking
I
forward
know.
to it. Keep hope
All
alive.
right.
Keep hope alive.
Yes. All
Bye-bye.
right.
All right.
Thank you. All right, sweetie. Oh, that was wonderful. I hope you all took copious notes, but know that you can find this on our YouTube channel, WKIM Media Network. Make certain that you subscribe, and you need to take this and send that link to your family because it's really a great educational piece. Well, I'm excited because our next guest is Diane Bell McCoy. She's the president and CEO of Associated Black Charities, a nonprofit which focuses on education, policy design, and innovative transactional and transformational strategies to eliminate the impact of structural racism and the adverse economic outcomes on the African American community. She came to this role as a well-respected leader and civil servant, focusing on equity and inclusion as the key tools for building a strong, vibrant economy for all citizens, regardless of race. She's known as a passionate and inspired advocate for moving beyond diversity in an ongoing battle to make equity and inclusion the central tools for achieving economic equality for all. PNC is dedicated to enriching the lives of people we meet every day, and we're happy to continue our partnership with Associated Black Charities to create a more inclusive economy, said Laura Gamble, PNC Regional President for Greater Maryland. Diane and ABC's work on understanding and educating our community on the underlying and institutional challenges that perpetuate and further marginalize communities of color is invaluable now as we see firsthand the disparate impact this excuse me this where see this is what happens when you get old, you get invaluable now as we can see firsthand the disparate impact that crisis has had on communities of color. She's launched her public service career in Baltimore, Washington, D.C. region, and she moved to Marion Barry's Public Policy Office as a team member for Changing the Odds, an early partnership with the Rockefeller Foundation and the District of Columbia government. Following that, she served in a number of other roles in DC government prior to joining city government under Mayor Kurt Schmoke's leadership. In Baltimore, she led the 1994 launch of the country's most successful empowerment zone, a federal $100 million 10-year investment to develop sustained economic and community development opportunities for residents and businesses in a targeted group of communities in Baltimore City. Under her leadership, the program achieved a return on an investment of $15 million. It was in this role she achieved greater clarity about the role of structural racism versus the limitation of success for a few as a result of a sustained dollar investment. Former Baltimore and current president of the University of Baltimore, Mayor Cordell Schmoke, calls her a respected leader in Baltimore who is helping to drive the conversation about racial equity and to improve the quality of life for Marylanders. She's also leading uh, in addition to leading ABC, she's active in the broader community locally and nationally through extensive board engagement and leadership. She was one of the initial co-leaders for the Baltimore Aspen Work Group for dismantling structural racism, a former trustee of the Baltimore Community Foundation, the former chair of Humanum. Miss Belle McCoy has served on the National Council for AARP. She currently serves on the boards of the Greater Baltimore Committee, Baltimore's Promise, and is a member of the Executive Committee of the Maryland Hospital Association. She was honored by the Baltimore Sun in 2018, Civic and Business Hall of Fame honoree, and was also named one of the Baltimore Sun's 25 Women to Watch in 2016. The Maryland Daily Record has twice recognized her as one of the region's most influential persons, and she is a member of its top 100 Women's Circle of Excellence, signifying an honor for those women who have been recognized at least 3 different years. Belle McCoy was also named one of the Daily Record's 2017 Icon Award recipients and is recognized as a Maryland business leader for her years of notable success and demonstration of long leadership both within and outside of their chosen fields. She and her team have developed a number of tools for addressing the impact of structural racism and fostering equity and inclusion to create economic strength for all communities. Through their work at ABC, Belle McCoy's team has authored, led the research on, and collaborated on a number of well regarded research reports and policy papers or recommendations. ABC's most recent research was released in May 2018, Patterns of Employment by Race in the Baltimore Metropolitan Region and Baltimore City. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Recent pieces include a new series of 10 essential questions. Available now are the policy application for a racial equity lens. 10 essential questions for policy, development, review, and evaluation. 10 essential questions for employers, business owners, HR professionals, hiring managers, and 10 essential questions for employers for racial equity, philanthropy. 10 essential questions for racial equity and grant making, policies, and practices. UMBC values her, and Freeman Hrabowski, Dr. Hrabowski, values her bringing a unique combination of research and data-driven focus to the fight against structural racism. We all trust Diane and appreciate her authenticity and passion for social justice. She has a consistent message in working with all sectors in our community, whether focusing on structural racism or inequality at all levels. Miss Belle McCoy is a graduate of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County for her undergraduate degree and University of Maryland at Baltimore for her master's, and she has obtained other postgraduate training. Regardless of all of these accomplishments, she's most proud of her role as wife, stepmother, and grandmother. It's my privilege and honor to welcome Diane Belle McCoy.
Oh my God, Marsha.
I read the whole thing, didn't I?
I know. It's like,
I read every bit of it. I read it. So what? I read Freeman
my
too.
friend.
I want people to know who they're listening to.
Thank you, Marsha.
Because you've done a lot of work, girl. That's why your hair is white.
My hair's white because I dyed.
Oh, okay. Well, I know that if you hadn't died, it was going to be that way because you've done a lot in this community, girl, and many other places. How did you even get there? What made you take this position what did you see?
How did I get where at ABC, or just this whole journey and focusing on how to support and how to move forward an agenda for Black people?
Well, I think you could make a combination of both. Whichever way you want to start, you're going to do what you want to do anyway.
We've known each other for a long time.
Yep.
I would say the journey, wherever I have been in my avocation, because I don't consider any of these jobs, everywhere I've been, that journey begins with my grandparents on both sides and my parents in terms of a firm belief and values about the importance of and the value of being Black and all the challenges that were part of growing up, all the challenges that my parents faced, my grandparents faced. And it was simply instilled in me that I had a responsibility, that as I continued to grow and my parents pushed and to do better, that I had to always give back, that it wasn't okay to just look out for me. It was never okay in my house with three other siblings that I had to look out. It certainly wasn't okay as my mother, my parents were divorced, would help out other children in the community and bring them actually in a home for periods of time. So it was just simply a part of who I am, that was important to continue to do. It's what I firmly believe in, that it's a difference for, makes a difference for me, and my belief. And so coming to Associated Black Charities was really just a continuation of that journey, having started, as you read the bio, having started in Marion Barry's administration. For those that know the history of Marion Barry, he was someone who didn't play. It was very clear, unapologetic, clear that he was supportive of Black people in Washington, D.C., and he was going to make millionaires, and he was going to ensure that they moved forward. His downside was obviously his own personal demons that ended up getting out, but he never changed about his commitment to the community of Washington, D.C., and particularly for Black citizens. So that was a journey in terms of, I will date myself to tell you, it was the very first time in the country that partnership with Rockefeller Foundation was the first in the country where people were using data to address issues that were holding Black and brown people back, and using that data to push the agenda forward. And that really continued my career through DC government, child welfare system, DC government in terms of the commissioner office, mayor's office, coming to Baltimore and Kurt. And all that's always been about focusing on that agenda in turn. But I grew in my knowledge along that journey, including in graduate school, a real clear sense, not just about kind of the issues, the problems, and how do we, I had a real issue at my graduate school, although you've identified who it is, because I felt like it was not, I felt like I could feel the issues of structural racism embedded there. I felt like in those early years that brown and Black people were clearly not respected, were seen as pathological, were seen as problems. And I knew that was not true. I knew it was not true. And so it continued to push me in terms of other parts of my career. And when I went into, from Kurt's administration to the Empowerment Zone, I got a chance with the Empowerment Zone with a team of phenomenal people, phenomenal board, to actually get clear that with amount of money that you had, you could make a difference for a number of people, that you could also give, you could help the community obtain some capacity where they were driving an agenda. But dollars that were targeted for people to move into jobs that were well-paying jobs that were developed by the employer. One still exists today, the Biotech Institute. All that, when you had enough dollars, you could make that difference. But what I learned out of that is we don't have enough dollars. There's not enough dollars to make that difference. And I learned that so much of this was still what I learned in graduate school. It was embedded in our systems. And what was embedded was structural racism. And that we need both. We need all of the programs that make a difference for Black and brown people. Obviously, education is critical for that. But unless we're integrating all of that with attacking and addressing and dismantling those systemic challenges, we're simply going to be here again and again and again and again.
I need you to talk to me about structural racism, because that seems to be like a relatively new word in the last 15, 20 years, right? Structural racism. I see an entity, but I don't know where it starts or how it embeds itself into the larger population for an understanding of what we can do to even change it. I don't hear enough voices talking about that change.
Well, I do think there are more voices now. There weren't as many voices when we began talking about it. When I began talking about it, was even doing parts of the empowerment zone before I came to ABC. My time at Casey Foundation, even because I was at Casey for a couple of years. Because I think what we still don't get and understand what that means in terms of it really is that is embedded in the policies, embedded in the practices. It is embedded in terms of our laws, in terms of what diminishes and Black and brown people. And we tend to think about racism from the individual perspective. And somebody says, oh, I'm not racist. And that's a conversation for another
Yeah,
day.
that's flippant.
But that's
Right.
flippant in terms of the reality is that racism, where Black and brown people are not valued, and you can determine that with data. You can determine that as you look at policies and you look at the data. That's why you can't have this conversation around structural racism without both knowing its history and where it comes from in those policies, in those laws, in this city. I mean, we did a video and very proud of that in terms of the team. The time Adara Yera was responsible for that. The history of structural racism in Baltimore. It talks about the laws. It talks about a number of those things that are still embedded in the practices, in the activity of this city, of people today. It talks about that if you don't measure for a business. And I'm going to go straight there because for us around the racial wealth gap, it really is about employers. It's about funders. It's about practitioners in the workforce space. But you believe that you have this practice in place that's going to benefit Black and brown and white people all equally. And if your numbers show you, as the report you identified that we did, if your numbers show you that your largest percentage of your population in your place of employment are low wage workers, and that large number are Black and brown people, and as you go up and you go up, it becomes whiter and whiter. That's the data. What does that tell you?
The data
Because
don't lie
clearly,
either. You
data
can't
does
change
not.
that.
And clearly, you have to know that Black and brown people are not broken. I say this over and over again. So
But
you got to,
wait.
yes,
You say all the time Black and brown people aren't broken, but why do you have to defend that? Who are you defending that to? What does that mean?
much of the practices, much of the funding until recently, when you think about philanthropy, when you think about even programs by government, remember government, our national government was very much perpetuator of structural racism. So let's understand that the policy laws, they perpetuated it. That is where it also begins in that. And so it began when you think about the policies around Black people of they're the poor people and what they need. And there's, oh, they don't know what they're doing. And oh, poor, well, bull, whatever. That's not real. That you, if you don't have access to information, if you don't have access to knowledge, in Freeman's point that he made earlier, as I smiled listening to him, in terms of the most important thing he describes for children, in terms of an environment and a belief in themselves and their greatness. And your grandson is special to know that in this sense. The whole inculturation of our country is embedded with a sense that Black and brown people are not worthy.
Right.
It's embedded. It's embedded in media. It's embedded. Look at the Sun paper editorial talking about the history. So how many years and years and years of the articles of everything that came out that said, you ain't worth S, you ain't
Right.
worth this, you ain't worth that. How many times in terms of you think about, at least my age, in terms of cringing when the news would come on, you pray, oh, it was not a Black person. All of that craziness. Think about that's embedded in terms of the whole media, social media. And let me please, if I can, Marsha, stop and just say a prayer in terms of into the families in terms of Buffalo.
Yes.
Just unbelievable
Yes.
in terms of what happened
Outrageous.
there. It just was outrageous. And so with that, with that happening, with that perpetuating that we're not worthy, that we're not thinkers, and the first of this and the first of that, there's greatness. There is greatness in every single Black person. We don't get told that. It doesn't get lifted up. We end up in trauma, and we end up thinking that that's our fault. We end up blaming ourselves. That's what I say, and I have to say over and over again, Black and brown people are not broken, because we're not. That's why you've got to look at the data in terms of, you look, so the report that talked about the sectors where Black people are employed in Baltimore, the 67% are employed in 5 sectors that are in largely low-wage jobs. Low-wage jobs, sectors that have high-wage growth opportunities. Healthcare, hospitals are one of those
Right.
in terms of that. And again, I don't think people believe they're intentionally doing it, but you ask, when you look at your policies, why don't your lower wage workers have an opportunity to move up? The Biotech Institute was an example of where now the Biotech Institute trains persons with a high school diploma to move into jobs as a clean room laboratory technician, very well paying jobs with a pathway with a high school diploma, intensive training, both in terms of the lab skills as well as professional skills, as well as that. But that was based upon an employer who was in a bind. This is during the empowerment zone years. He was in a bind. He had a clean room laboratory. He had to open up for the federal government a contract. He was up against the wall. He needed workers. We was at a GBC meeting, and we knew we had money that could help him train people, although he was looking for persons with a college degree. At the same time, Able Foundation was working with a professor from Hopkins who also knew a janitor who wanted to do something different, combining that with BCCC and that employer, and thus was born ultimately the Biotech Institute, where you could actually train people who had a high school diploma to move in these jobs that previously were a college degree. It's not to say that all college degrees are bad. That's not the statement. But all jobs don't require that
Right.
we put that label there. And so if you don't look at those jobs that are in your system and say, do they really require a college degree? Can I train that person to move into that job? And guess what? If I'm training a person that's already in my place of employment, then I may, in fact, have a person who develops a loyalty, who knows my culture, even if it's not a great culture, but in terms of willing to be there. Those are the things that have to be changed, that you've got to look at the data. You've got to look at that. You've got to analyze that. And dismantling structural racism is a journey. It's not going to happen overnight, because I will tell you what I've learned, and I'm still learning. I'm very clear, I'm still learning, that it really has to begin in terms of leadership, of a business leadership, of a foundation leadership. If the leadership doesn't lead it, doesn't believe in it, and is not willing to go through this change process themselves, it's not going to happen. Because undoing that, even as a Black woman, I describe this as my white racist stripes, or my white stripes, I describe it, because I'm inculturated in white America.
Mhm.
So I've been successful. There are times that I've not been a great person in terms of the things that believe in kind of white supremacist beliefs of hurry, rush, you got to get it done. No, we don't, not like that. And you can't diminish the strengths and can't diminish the positives of Black people. But you got to be willing to look at yourself. You got to look for, particularly for white Americans, you got to look at your history. And you discover that things you were told, things you learned, aren't true. That's
Mhm.
hard. That's a hard bullet to
Don't
swallow.
nobody want to hear the truth. You've
Yeah.
been walking around thinking that you had it all under control, and you had got this big old job, and
Mhm.
rah, I can go here and sit on this board and do that. Don't nobody want to hear that.
People
That's
don't.
the truth. That's some embedded stuff that they deal with at the barbecue in the summertime with their friends who
Yeah.
have the same kind of thought process about what they see with people of color.
Absolutely. And it also plays out in terms of their social network. We know how much social networks have a value. They have a dollar value.
Yes.
What does that mean in
Cash
terms of
rules.
you having access to that? What does that mean in terms of if you don't look at your own policies, you don't look at who you're surrounding yourself with, if you don't take a real critical look at that, and go deeper on that, that becomes really important to dismantling, to changing this. And that's hard. It takes a time. It's going to take time. It's hard for us in terms of our agenda at ABC, because it's not an agenda that you can say tomorrow, okay, I can produce these widgets for you, or I can graduate. All that's important, as I said earlier. And we partner with organizations, but it means trying to change the mindset, trying to strategize, influence people who don't believe this is possible, trying to shift them in terms of that, but also trying to support Black workers, like our volunteer career mentor program, actually having volunteers be trained by a curriculum that's been designed twice to make sure it's responsive to help Black workers moving into employment in order for them to be successful, to think about career. They may have the hard skills, but they don't necessarily haven't thought about career path, thought about retention, thought about the challenges. That's what that volunteer does with the volunteer career mentor. And that's my plug for anybody that wants to become a volunteer mentor. We need volunteers in terms of that, and particularly in sectors, technology sectors, specialized sectors, because there are workers there that are moving into that are Black and that need that kind of support in terms of a mentor. We have a new curriculum we're beta testing in the next couple months. It's called Reimagine Workplace in terms of competencies. It really was a former employee, Claire, who I have to give her a plug for this work she did with Dr. Leon, where they literally did focus groups with Black workers. They did their research. What we found, if you think about our journey, Marcia, is somewhere along the way, moving into white environments, somebody helped us understand how to manage that environment, how to deal with the racism, how to deal with the bias, how to deal with all that. That's not a given. And so this curriculum really is about self-efficacy, helping Black workers understand their value, appreciate their value, manage their value inside of that workplace that may not see them as valuable. So we're beta testing that curriculum. We believe it will be valuable for Black workers in terms of being successful in going to a number of the workplaces that are not changing yet. But we need those Black workers to be successful, to go up the ladder, to be able to buy a home in terms of impacting their own family wealth. Because if you also want the children that Dr. Hrabowski talked about to be nurtured and supported in terms of that, that means also that parent having the space to be nurtured and supported and the wherewithal in terms of versus 5 jobs in terms of moving forward. It's integrated. This is not the conversation with Dr. Hrabowski just had about education is not a singular conversation. This conversation about structural racism and the closing the racial wealth gap is not a singular conversation. If we had somebody talking on about the whole issue of trans equity, that's not a singular conversation. The health disparities, those are not singular conversation, guys. Those are all integrated conversations. At the core of that is this very issue that is the issue in this country, that is the issue that causes the deaths, that continues to cause the trauma for Black and brown people, and that is structural racism.
But how do all of those racists that sit around and be racist, how do you even penetrate that kind of a spirit that has gone through generations of hate? And many are still carrying that. They put on a facade. You can see it. You know it when somebody's got the mask on, because it's going to be one little something after a comma that you're going to hear and you'll already know, or a wince or a movement, a facial expression, or a body change just in the conversations because it's so hard for them to swallow. How do you do
Marsha,
that?
I don't know that we'll change them. So let me be clear.
Okay.
I don't know that we will. I do know that dollars talk. This is still America, and it's still a capitalist system. However, we may want something different. And so where you see more and more that businesses are being asked by their clients, that we want to see something different around diversity or around equity. We want to see different in terms of how you're responding to Black and brown people. Well, we're not going to put our dollars there unless you've got people that look like us in that space or look like Black and brown people. You've got changes happening in our own state legislative process with groups like Leaders for a Beautiful Struggle, Out for Justice, that are pushing that agenda, legislators that are pushing that agenda. You've got a mayor who has said that equity must be the center of the government, and they're trying to move on that. It's a long haul. It's a long haul.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to go with the willing. And then where you don't have the willing, you got to use the bat, which may be the dollars in terms of push. But I also think we need new tools. There's a company called Black Brain Trust. Angel would kill me not remember Black Brain Trust that's developing a actual set of tools for different sectors where they actually should be able to measure in terms of technology, measure where that business is from a standpoint of equity, and by using their own data. That's going to be powerful, powerful when that becomes available. She's beta testing that now. And I definitely wouldn't give her a shout out. We need more of those tools to help people be able to dig deep and identify where somebody's just giving you the okie dokie. And it really hasn't been any change happening in that world of business, or it hasn't been any change happening in that foundation, or it hasn't been any change happening in that nonprofit space. It's a long, long road. And I'm not sitting here saying we're going to change all the way. I don't think that's possible. But I do know that we've got to make sure, just as Freeman talked about as it relates to education, voting is important. And we've got to make sure that we make use of that tool and encourage as many people as possible to make use of it. I'm not going to tell you who, but certainly that's a power that we have, that we've got to use more of it in terms of moving forward. But we absolutely must change this agenda in terms of moving forward. And where you have, I think the other thing is good to use, I've seen this work where there have been people that have shifted, white males, for example, white, where they've shifted their thoughts. They then have become powerful allies, not to talk to Black folks, for them to go talk to some white folks.
Right.
And helping them shift, because they can share what that shift has been like. I was on a particular board, and one of the leaders on this particular board went through the training over a series of years, and he said to me, Diane, this was the hardest thing I ever had to do. I realized that there's so many things that I was taught growing up that are not true. And I really had to wrap my head around what did that mean about me? What did that mean about some of my own thoughts? And so that's the kind of shift that has to then continue to shift, and then continue to shift his behavior, continue to shift his behavior with his company, in terms of continue to shift his behavior with others in terms of pushing for something different. That's critical. I think that's, we're not doing enough of that and moving this agenda forward.
But Diane, right here, I want to in here that I think it's really interesting that somebody has to actually sit and listen to your comments, or the panel, or however wherever they learn this information. And everything that they thought was true, they're now hearing another side that doesn't find a place. I call it finding a place in their brain for it to fit. They don't know what to do with that, so they gotta chew on it for a little while. Do people call you back after they finally acknowledge that this was an aha moment? How do you get them to that?
Some people do. I'm not the trainer for ABC in this space. Let me be clear. My role is more this role of sharing what we do, of trying to influence some of the leaders to do this journey in terms of, and we've been successful, but we have people that actually do the training. One of our staff did the training for GBC workforce effort, in terms of a group of players came together around the workforce agenda, and they did that training. As you know, when Adara was at ABC, did a lot of the training in the legislators. And so it really is then moving people to the next level. So somebody may come to me and say, where do I go with this now?
Yeah.
I can point them to us. If they're not ready, I can point them to somewhere else, because yes, or we may continue to have a conversation, so that I can have that conversation with you sitting on Zoom now, or I could have had that conversation at the coffee shop 2 years ago.
Right.
In terms of, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what that means in a very quiet, personal way, because I'm not going to attack you.
Right.
I know that you got to keep moving, that you got to, and there's some people that don't want to hear, and I can move on. I'm not going to waste my energy there if you're not interested in that, moving forward in that journey. It is a journey for all of us. Again, I acknowledge it's a journey for us. It's a journey for me as a Black citizen. I recognize it's my own journey. And I would say at this point, Marcia, I'm going to say something that may upset a number of Black people, but I think what I've learned now at this point in my own journey is, I also think as Black people, we've got to find space to have some of our own conversations about our own stuff.
Yes.
And
yes. Say that one more time.
We got to find space and time for our own stuff, because we've been enculturated in such a negative way about sometimes Black people and other Black people. And when Nicole asked that question, Nicole, head of Out for Justice, asked the question when I had the good fortune to interview Oprah. And I asked Nicole's question, which was, she struggles with trying to find mentors for mothers, returning citizens who need support in that return. And she talks about the challenge of middle-class Black women not being available or not wanting to be available. I don't know why that's true, but that was her question she asked Oprah. And Oprah, it stumped her. She didn't know why. But I do know that we've got to find a way across income, across age, for us, and I'm as a Black woman, for us as Black women, to find the space to talk about that trauma, to begin to talk about what that means for us, to identify those things that happen for us and why we may not see ourselves necessarily as positive. And not seeing yourself positive, then you don't see somebody who looks like you as positive either.
Right.
That we've got to find some space for that so that we can grow stronger and mightier in our helping to continue to move this agenda forward for all of us as Black citizens.
I think that that's a very interesting question for Oprah. But when we look at these women who are incarcerated, too often it's because of drugs related to many of their partners and other things that keep them from marching in a line that will get you to success. What does that look like? And are there any people in their circle who look like that, who represent that? So if you don't even know where to go to find that assistance or to penetrate those communities, how can you expect them to know that you're there or have been trained to understand what is even needed?
But I think that goes to the point that the question raised, and that is an access issue. But I want to also go back to your point about the women, particularly women of color, incarcerated. Some of it is maybe drugs, but just a reminder, the data we know that Black people are over incarcerated.
Yes.
And not always incarcerated for valid reasons. So I just want to put that out there.
Thank you, and I appreciate that.
But the other part of that is, I think what Nicole's point was, is her organization was one of those trying to be the connector. Because we have to find ways to connect in terms of access, to be able to show the pathway. Freeman's point was around our children, making sure he talked about the UMBC alum in terms of the vaccination, which she's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But we think about even the other greats in terms of Black women, Black men, and if Black children don't get to see that, well, what does that mean for a Black mother in terms of returning citizen who is struggling with all the issues of being a returning mother and having somebody that has a different experience or who can open up different doors or information? We know from our volunteer career mentoring what difference it makes. We know from our own relationship, Marsha, in terms of networking and opening those doors, what difference it makes.
That's right.
And so we've got to be much more intentional about providing that. And, I think we've got to recognize, and I applaud so many of the younger African-American advocates and nonprofit leaders in Baltimore right now, because I think their voices are very different in my mind. Their voices are clear. We're not going to not say this out loud. We must push. We must push for change, and we're not going to apologize for it. We're going to continue to say, and we're going to pay attention to lifting up our community, even others in terms of may not be young, but are very much a part of making that difference. I named Nicole, but I think about Kim Flowers. I think about so many of the leaders in the community that don't get showtime, that don't get lifted up in the newspaper, that don't get lifted up on radio, that we need to be continue to support those voices in terms of them pushing forward, that don't get access to funding. I think we have to redefine Black leadership.
Hmm.
I think
That's very
we have to
interesting.
redefine Black.
Redefining it. What does that mean?
I think we have to come together. And this is my passion point right now, is
Okay.
finding a way for Black women to come together to redefine. I want to create a Black Women's Institute for Black women across those different boundaries to redefine leadership. You're sitting inside of a corporation, or you're sitting in the community as a leader, you're sitting in a nonprofit, and you're trying to find space. You're trying to find space to be authentic, and you don't have that space, and you need support, and you don't know where to get it. In terms of, or you're having all those arrows come at you constantly in terms of that. We need to define what leadership is. And then we need to push that definition out there and find ways to create more opportunities and more tools to grow that kind of leadership. But I don't think it can happen unless it's across all the ages for women, Black women, and across incomes. This is not anything that's a model of leadership that says you got to be here, you got to be at this level. No. Leadership
Come as you are.
come as you are. That's leadership in our community has always been that. You think about our history. Think about our history. Leadership in our community has always been all of that. We have to go back and move that forward in terms of, and how do we come together to do that and figure out how to lift each other up.
Because it's really just being straight up no chaser. And
Mhm.
you call 5 people, somebody else calls 5 people, and it's time for us to have to change, right? And a lot of conversations, we've been in this being sequestered, right? And a lot of people have been thinking about all of these things, because you're not doing what you used to do. You were moving fast. You go from here to there to somewhere else. Now all of a sudden you can't go to all these places.
Mhm.
You can't do all these things. There's a concern,
Yes, obviously.
right? But there's still a conversation that's rolling around in people's minds just based on what they've seen on television or read in the paper. They're in social media. The conversation is being had, but is it being said in front of those that can impact change? Is it being deliberate about saying, here are 5 people that I know have these things, assets, internally, emotionally, mentally. They have these assets. How do we bring them here to help somebody who only has one asset, but needs the whole body to embrace them, to help them understand, where do I go next? How
I
do I
think
get there from here?
I think there are efforts out there, Marsha. I would say I don't think they're all necessarily organized. The group I'm a part of,
Right.
Results, are trying. I think they're out there. I think that we have to continue, those that have voice and those that have access to live streaming, and need to lift them up. I've said to a group of Black women recently that I want to feature them on my LinkedIn site, because I'm going to do that. I think we've got to do more of using whatever we have in terms of access to relationships, access to people, to lift up people, Black people, for me, for Black women. It's not to say I'm not interested in lifting up Black men, but as a Black woman, I'm mindful of those limitations that other Black women have. And I think that's important. But I must go back, Marsha, though, to talk about ABC in terms of
Yes.
this space around that. That I also think, the challenge is around, how do you begin to really recognize that if we're going to change this agenda, we're going to close that racial wealth gap, it must be a strategy. ABC cannot do closing the racial wealth gap by ourselves. That's just impossible.
Mhm.
So there are lots of partners for us. There are lots of strategic relationships for us to begin to push to make that difference, whether it's at funders table where we're partnering with other funders who think the same. And how do we then move that strategically to begin to get other funders to shift and think differently and fund differently, in terms of, we have the 10 essential questions in terms of racial equity for philanthropy. Monica Mitchell, Wells Fargo, actually sponsored that, but actually talks about using that in terms of Wells Fargo. How do we begin to just continue to plant and continue to push this in terms of inside of the systems, but starting with that leadership, starting with those voices that can make that difference, and then holding them accountable. I've said to BBJ, I've said to them, and I'll call them out because I've said it to them,
Okay.
that all the stories that were done right after George Floyd's, in terms of, tell me where those companies are now that you went interviewed and they said they were going to do this, do that. Tell me where they are now. Let's go back to them. Let's figure out what have they done differently. Our media has a responsibility in this to actually bring that out, not just lift up, and yes, lift up Black and brown people doing great things and great things everywhere in this city, not just the murder rate. And that's something we have to address, obviously. But also go to some of those companies and ask them to tell their story. Put them on blast. If we don't all lift that up, then we're all part of that same problem.
That's exactly right.
We're going to keep that same problem going forward. And so that's a part of the strategy for ABC in terms of how do we partner with other organizations to move this agenda forward. Tiffany Truss, our workforce strategist, in terms of partnering with a number of other funders around community of practice, and getting Casey has been a great supporter for that body of work for us. But we have other, Julia from Baltimore's Promise, which is doing great work in terms of that. Really, how do we begin to find people that have not just shared interests? Because I will tell you, my lesson I learned is I'm no longer just interested in people that have a shared interest. I used to think, and I've gotten bit twice, by believing that if I ran into Black people that had a shared interest, shared belief, and lifting up our community, and were very much in tune with that, then I was in good company. No. I've learned that I got to make sure I find people that have that and shared values and shared integrity. Because if I don't have those three, it's not going to go very far.
And they can't be in it for them.
And can't be in it for them. But that's a hard lesson learned.
But that's real, girl.
It's
Because
very
folks
real.
be in it, but they ain't in it for the cause.
That's right.
As the kids say, they ain't down for the cause, right?
Right. But we've got to be much more discerning. I'm not putting people out, but I'm clear that we got to be real in terms of walking that path. And we got to be okay when we're called out. You know, I've been called out in terms of things I didn't do well, in terms of on behalf. And I had to hear that, you know, but we all have to be willing to hear it and be willing to go about change. If we say that we're committed to this agenda on behalf of Black people in this city, in this state, in this country, we got to be willing. And sometimes that's tough. When we began talking about structural racism before Freddie Gray's death, I had Black people tell me, shh, don't talk about that. Don't do that. You're going to make your funders unhappy. Don't talk about that. I had Black people tell me, do not talk about structural racism.
Of course you did.
You know? Now, of course, they say, yes, talk about it. But that's not then. Even as I had this conversation now to say we need to make space for us to talk about our own kind of internalized oppression, I know that that's not going to be comfortable for me, for people to hear me say that. But I know for sure, Marsha, 5 years, 7 years down the road, it's going to be something we all going to be talking about.
It's going to take them some time just to get used to it because they've been living a different way.
Yeah.
They're living a different way. And so you're coming and you have this energy and like, let's make it happen. I want it happen now. And we need to get it going. And you hand carry them through, and then they still can't get it. But at some point, they're going to have an aha moment. Something you said, something you did, because people can see what you do. They can see it. And then they get it into their system. And that's how you get the kind of support you have today.
We've all got to see it. We've all got to continue to talk about it.
Yes.
We've all got to continue moving it forward. Like I said, I could name a host of organizations in Baltimore that do this work, do phenomenal work in this space, and that it really is a collection in terms of moving this agenda forward.
That sounds like a retreat.
It does sound like it would be a good
sounds like a treat
in terms of that. But Marsha, I want to be, as I pay attention to the time, I want to, and I know
you better go ahead because you got something happening coming up.
That's right. So I got to make use of that time to talk about the gala.
You could always come back. We could always talk about it. But let's start.
I want to talk about ABC's gala. Thank you for posting. Yay. And this is our first in-person gala in 2 years.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes. And luckily, when we were planning for it, near the end of last year and the beginning of this year, Anika Edmonds, our development director, talking about it, and even the board, we talked about let's find a place outdoors. Because
Oh, that's wonderful.
just in case COVID has
Right.
shifted back,
Rears its head.
wait, let's make sure we don't have to cancel. Let's be outdoors. Let's
Mhm,
protect people. And
mhm.
so we are, in fact, at Sagamore, Port Covington, outdoors under tent
I
in
love
terms
it.
of that. Yes.
That's
And so
smart.
I'm grateful for that opportunity this year for people to come. And we have a few tickets left. We've got great sponsors. And I'm going to look at my sheet because I'm going to give you my sponsors' names.
Please do. Take
I'm
your time, girl, because you
grateful.
better list them.
I'm grateful for all that they do in terms of M&T. And M&T has been a sponsor of ABC Scale for many, many years in terms of MedStar, University of Maryland Systems, Johns Hopkins, both university and medical system, Chesapeake Employees Insurance, Able Foundation, Wells Fargo, absolutely in terms of Monica's not only on board, but been a huge supporter, Whiting and Turner, PNC, Harry and Jeanette Weinberg Foundation. Of course, Annie E. Casey, who's been a huge champion for our work over the years. We have both Brown Capital and we have Brown Advisory.
I
We
love
have
it.
BGE. We have Truist. We have GBMC. We have the Afro is our media sponsor. And I'm looking to make sure I have not forgotten anyone. And please know if I've forgotten anyone, it was not my heart, but my head. But I tried to write down to make sure. But let me be clear, if anybody wants to be a sponsor, you got one more day and you can be a sponsor, but you can still
Girl,
purchase.
you going to take that money
Oh, Truist.
up to the day they can get
Right.
there.
I'm sorry if I didn't mention Truist. Absolutely.
Okay.
He would kill me in terms of that as a sponsor. Um, Yes, but this is why this is important. The gate is important both as a marketing opportunity, but the gate is important for, it's not just a night to party. I remember when I came to ABC many years ago, people said all they knew about ABC was the gate, is the party. Party is fun, but that's really not the core of it. That the body of work that we do is not a body of work that you're going to easily be able to get a foundation to fund. We get funding from some great partners like the Weinberg is a funder for us. Annie Casey is a funder for us. In terms of that, we get some foundation funding. Clearly, we from Truist, Comcast is coming as a sponsor for Gala. We get funding. Comcast sponsored our speaker series. We get funding from, but it's not enough that you can't write a grant that says, give me $500,000 or $1 million, because we're not moving people through training for employment. We're then making sure that training can be successful, that employee can be successful once they get to work.
Right.
In terms of, we're trying to break down the barriers that keep them from staying attached to work, that then cause them to lose their job. We're trying to push, we're in many ways an advocate. We're trying to push against foundations that don't necessarily want to have this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most people aren't funding that.
Mm-hmm.
And that means we've got to do events.
Right.
And that's one of the reasons of the gala, the speaker series, the Women on the Move. That fund allows us to fund the work that we do in terms of that, because we can't just write a grant. Many people believe that ABC's got all this, all that in terms of money. Not true. We kind of show big, but that's not true in terms of our pocketbook. Certainly we're blessed. And I would not even say that we aren't blessed, because we are. But this
the
is
reality is that the institution is doing excellent work, and we need the community leaders, the business leaders, to be supportive of this organization, from the top to the bottom and in anywhere in between. We need to support our organizations, and the work that you all are doing is impactful. And there aren't many, if anybody else, I don't think that I know of, that's doing the type of work Associated Black Charities is doing. And to be able to have a voice that the people that need to hear it will listen to. There's a difference.
Well, thank you, Marsha. I do think there are others. I'm not going to, because
I'm not going to say that, but I'm talking to you, and I'm not going to bring up everybody else and make
okay,
list
Marsha,
everybody. I brought Associated Black. Let me do what I do. For real. I mean,
yes, Ms.
we're
Marsha.
here.
Yes,
There
Miss
are
Martha.
organizations that are doing things, but I know the reason why you're on this show is because the work that you are doing has been impactful. And you and Associated Black Charities and your team have been able to penetrate the leadership roles of the top corporations in the state of Maryland and beyond. So I'm going to be able to say it. I can say it. I don't need you to say it. I want to say it because it's what I've seen for the however many since 1990 something since you've been doing this.
Yeah, I remember Marcia came up to me and asked me one day when I was talking, I think it was one of the galas and I was talking about it. He said, "How do you do that? How do you talk about structural racism and have people want to hear it?"
Right. Right.
One is it's real.
Because you're respectful, first of all. I'm so ignorant. I ain't no telling what I might say, but go
No,
ahead.
that's not true. It's real. It's important. I think more and more people with the death of George Floyd at least began to pay attention differently than they had before. Not everyone clearly is paying attention, but we do see some movement. We've got to see more movement. Um, we've got such greatness in this town in terms of Black people. We've got such greatness. And, we're not lifting up that greatness. And yes, we've got challenges. And I have my own theory in terms of all the gun violence and the murder across this country right now, but so much in terms of all the trauma that we're dealing with in terms of COVID, in terms of all the negativity in terms of that. There's so much trauma. The mental health issue that is just off the chart right now, off the
Yeah.
chart. The data tells us
Wow.
how significantly impacted Black people are right now. It tells us that. We got to pay attention to all of that if we want to see a
But what
difference.
do we do? What do we
Well,
do?
much I think we're doing. So that's my point. I think we're
Okay.
doing. I think the programs in terms that got started in the city around addressing trauma. I know that the Brown family, in terms of Eddie and Sylvia, in terms of the Family Foundation, is very clear and focused with Baltimore Community Foundation and looking at what more can be done about mental health. I know that that's a big issue in terms of for Care First. I know that's a big issue for so many community-based organizations who are doing something on the ground in terms of that, about healing and the healing circles, that the things that are part of our ancestors, the things that are part of our culture are now also being lifted up as a way to also give us healing, as a way to say, this is okay, as a way that Freeman talked about helping us know that we're okay. That's really all we have to, and the professionals that I know we have a shortage of professionals in this space. And those professionals have to value Black people and brown people, that we're not broken. They can't be professionals that see us as brokenness and something to be fixed in terms of that. That's not what this is about.
Well, one of the things I think that as we move forward and we look, we have so many community organizations that we didn't have before that are filled with young people. I'm
Mhm.
saying young because my behind is old, but who are not playing. They're very committed. They're very outspoken. They're driven. And I'm just so excited about what they're doing and how they're doing it. One of the things, and I know we only got a couple more minutes, but I would love to know is how we can do more with them with some of our other institutions so that we can give them the support or the assistance and understanding how to navigate all that other stuff. Right?
Marshall, you could begin by bringing some of them on the show
Okay, well,
and
let's do that. We'll
asking them.
talk about that.
Let's talk about it.
We're gonna do that.
Okay.
We'll do that. We'll do. Ooh, girl, come on, we'll do that. That'll be cold blooded too. All right, it's over. It's 9 o'clock.
Thank you.
Diane Val McCoy, girl, I love you so much.
I love you, Marshall.
I'm
Thank you so
just
much for
loving you.
everything.
This is wonderful. Really, really excited for you. And I know that the gala is going to be a tremendous success as it always is. Thank you.
Thank you.
And make certain that you let us know if there's anything else we can do.
Okay, we will come
All
back
right.
and talk. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Diane Bell McCoy, President of Associated Black Charities. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've done another one. Oh my God, that was a great show. Really, I hope you all were taking notes because there's a lot of stuff going on that these people were talking about that can be impactful in your community or in your homes. Thank you. We'll see you next week. And next week we have, oh, I got to get this book. Okay, so you see me trying to be all whatever. So next week we have Michelle Pettis and Kara Smith to talk about weight and how to change your lives. So stay tuned next Tuesday from 7 to 9. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next week.